Hi everyone, Gemma here, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be providing you my top tips for how to keep up your bullet journal all year long. I've been bullet journaling for around 4.5 years now, and this is the first year that I've finally filled up a whole journal, and it's such a satisfying feeling that I would like to share my insights and tips with you in the hope that it helps you keep up with your journal. But before I get into those insights, if you enjoy calligraphy, journaling or stationery, consider subscribing for similar future content. Right, first things first are stickers. Now stickers are great because you don't have to learn to draw to be able to create a theme. Now I'm not very good at drawing, it doesn't come naturally to me, and it's actually something I need to work at. I enjoy the fresh start element of monthly themes, but it was proven to be a lot of work to have to learn to draw new things each month, and I'd have to learn them in advance, and it was just a bit of a pain. However, stickers are ready-made prettiness, and they can easily fit in with your aesthetic because you can shop about and find a style that you like. If you're a stationery addict, it's also a fun excuse to buy stationery, and it kind of satisfies that urge to buy stationery supplies. My next tip is to have a junk journal. I like my bullet journal nice and organised, but I have a daily need for writing notes and then loading my thoughts onto paper. I didn't like to use my bullet journal for that purpose because I like it as neat and organised as possible, so I either ended up dissatisfied with my journal because it contained messy content, or I kept it tidy and carried around too much information in my head and ended up getting stressed. This year I've used a dedicated junk journal for the day-to-day stuff. I use it for note-taking, calligraphy practice, quick to-do lists, etc, etc. It's basically a notebook, but I still like having it dotted because I can plan out spreads in this junk journal. And just because I call it my junk journal doesn't mean it has to be a scruffy notebook, it just has to be one that you're comfortable using for rough notes. Moving on, my next tip is to keep it simple. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love gorgeous bullet journal spreads, but I think one of the keys to upkeeping your bullet journal all year long is keeping it nice and simple. I keep my journal simple both on the artistic side and on the functionality side. For example, on the artistic side I've cut out drawing, and then on the functionality side I've removed trackers. I recommend keeping it minimalist and then building up from there. I've really cut out the stuff that wasn't working for me this year, and it's made things so much easier. Now, one of my tips that I'd really like to emphasise is work with your energy, don't go against it. So frankly, there are some days where I really cannot be bothered to journal. I might be tired, I might be fed up and burnt out, and on those days I don't go against it, I just accept that I'm not going to journal that day, and that's okay. In previous years, I would feel anxious if I didn't keep up with my journal every day, whereas now, if I'm not feeling up for it, I either don't journal for a couple of days or limit how much room I have to journal. I think this applies to productivity as well. If you're feeling mentally or physically run down, it's okay to take a break. It's fine, nothing will happen, I promise. Another tip relating to this is to accept that you won't journal every day. Now, it's easy to forget things when you don't journal every day, and I wanted to capture every detail of my day-to-day life, but it started to become a burden because I started to feel this real pressure to journal daily. This year I found that once I accepted that I may lose some of the smaller details by not journaling every day, and that's okay, I found that I actually started journaling more regularly. It's kind of funny that just the act of accepting that it's okay not to journal made it easier to journal. In previous years, I would go through a cycle of feeling this burden to keep it up constantly and then not journaling for a while because I was burnt out, whereas now I journal at least once every couple of days. Journaling is a powerful and wonderful thing. If it becomes a burden, you're probably doing it wrong, and I think I was definitely doing it wrong for quite some time. On to another tip about acceptance, but this one is about accepting imperfections. Try to think of it this way: would you expect someone else to write daily for a year and not make a single error? I highly doubt it, so try not to be so hard on yourself if you don't end up liking a design or if you've made a mistake. Try your best to accept it and move on. Also, I found that not trying to correct an error is better for acceptance, but also whenever I tried to cover up the mistake, I would always make it end up looking far worse and far more obvious. Now, I know that this is a hard one for some people, including myself at times, but I promise once you accept those imperfections, your journaling experience will improve. Next up, don't set up a month in advance. Your mood can change frequently and so can your bullet journaling needs. I've stopped planning a month in advance. I tend not to even plan out the week ahead now. Because my bullet journal is predominantly a journal, I don't always know what's going to crop up, and I like the flexibility of being able to change how much I write each day without feeling tied down to a set number of rows. Obviously, there are some monthly spreads that you may want to create at the beginning of the month, but for the weekly spreads, I recommend not creating them a month in advance. Moving on, ditch the boxes. If you create a box per day of the year, that's 365 boxes that you have to draw out manually, and that is a lot. When you add in the setup of the monthly spreads as well, it's a lot of work and a lot to keep up with. I'm definitely lazy when it comes to journaling, and I would often procrastinate on journaling because I knew that I'd have to create several boxes, and it felt like a time commitment rather than something that was supposed to help me relax and to reflect. That's not to say that I don't use headers. I use a brush pen to create small boxes, and it's great because it doesn't require a ruler and being uber tidy. Give it a try, ditch the boxes in 2021. Now let's talk bujo burnout. Around 6 or 7 months into each year, I would typically lose creativity or motivation to keep going. This year I created a couple of dividing pages when setting up for July and labelled it 2020 Part 2. The page stands out if I'm flipping through it, and it almost feels like a mini fresh start. Another tip if you're feeling burnt out is to keep the boxes for each day small, meaning that you have to keep your journaling short and sweet. I can always write more on a spare page, but I never actually ended up needing to do that. Keeping the space that you can journal limited offers the opportunity to reset and tidy up your journal a little. As I mentioned in my 2021 bullet journal setup, getting the right annual spreads is really important for success in the year ahead. When I say get it right, I don't just mean in terms of the design, but also in terms of your needs. I recommend that you don't add in too much. There was one year where I decided that rather than set up a monthly tracker, I would create numerous annual trackers, which at the time I thought I was genius because it would stop me from having to set up all of these trackers each month, but it didn't work at all. I ended up with like 20 spreads at the beginning of my year, and it was a complete mess. Your needs change a lot during the year, and I found that I ended up not using a lot of them throughout the year. Now I just keep to 2 annual spreads, and that works best for me. So I recommend having a think about what you really need from your journal and keeping it to the basics. Moving on, let's discuss experience. Now, you learn over time what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and sadly there's no shortcut for this other than keep going. I mean, there are times where I really felt demotivated and considered giving up bullet journaling, but I kept going, and I'm really thankful that I did. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. The best way to find out what works for you is simply experience. Also, it is really interesting flicking back through previous bullet journals to see what has changed over the years. You might actually find that you're inspired by your own previous work. That's how I settled on my December card and gift tracker. It was inspired by an early 2019 spread that I'd worked on. For those watching this video, what has your own experience taught you? Let me know down in the comments. Okay, my next tip is to not create your bullet journal spreads based on what you believe other people expect or want to see from you. When I discovered the more creative side of bullet journaling, I enjoyed creating and then posting my work on Instagram. I felt it was kind of the done thing to post to Instagram if you enjoy bullet journaling, But over time I started to get burnt out. I felt that I had to create something impressive and that it also needs to follow kind of the norms of what other people were doing. Now I know that some people might just say, well, it's easy, just don't post. But it's an easy pit to fall into, and I just want to raise awareness that if you find that you're adjusting your bullet journal spreads for the purpose of posting them to Instagram or to other social media, then you're not creating purely for yourself, and there is a chance that you'll experience burnout more quickly. Eventually I stopped posting to Instagram. I wasn't really enjoying the process anymore, whereas nowadays I really do create solely based on what works for me. If you do enjoy creating content, have a think about what brings you satisfaction, but also have a think about what drains you and avoid that. For example, I really enjoy watching YouTube and creating content for YouTube. I enjoy the process, whereas I find Instagram a bit more draining to use. To sum this point up, only create for social media if you genuinely enjoy it, and check in with yourself to make sure that you continue to enjoy it. Another social media tip now: when you're bombarded with gorgeous or inspiring bullet journal spreads, it is very easy to start to feel inferior. I know that I definitely have in the past. I love journaling and I did enjoy consuming bullet journal content, but when I first got started with creative journaling, I was consuming journaling content so regularly, particularly on Instagram, that frankly I felt sad that my journaling didn't look as impressive as other people's. I'm not naturally artistic, and I think that showed in my journaling. Now, I don't mean that to come across as self-deprecating, I just want to be honest with you about how I honestly felt, and I expect others have probably felt in the past. I think this factor, along with my previous point, is what led to my worst experience of burnout, and it led me to stop journaling for 6 months, the longest break in my journaling journey. To overcome this year I set a reminder on Instagram so that I don't spend more than 15 minutes on there a day. I also cut back on the number of bullet journalers that I follow, and I prefer to consume journaling content on YouTube, as you tend to see more about their process rather than just a pretty picture, and you get more of the creator's personality as well. I'd also highly recommend joining Facebook journaling groups. Facebook groups have been my favourite discovery in 2020. Because self-promotion isn't allowed, it's more focused on the community aspect and hints and tips, and I really enjoy the community there. Okay, moving on. You do not need monthly themes with elaborate drawings. You don't even need monthly themes. It's kind of standard in the bullet journal community that with each month comes a new monthly theme, and that can be really great because each month feels like a mini fresh start, but it can also be a lot of work. I personally enjoy shaking things up every month, but I tend to go for a colour scheme rather than elaborate themes with lots of drawings. I often pick 1 or 2 colours and then draw with them for the month. I then add stickers, but only if I fancy it. Next is something that's really helped me this year, and that is to ditch the trackers and anything else that isn't working for me personally. I rarely kept on top of my trackers, and I felt like it was a hassle to create them. Same goes for monthly calendars. Removing them has made my journal feel much less of a chore. So have a think about what parts of your own journal you associate with feeling frustrated or drained, and ditch it. My bullet journal is now very streamlined and I like it that way. Now onto my most controversial tip, given the nature and the title of this video. If you've tried bullet journaling time after time and you've tried so many tips and it's just not working for you, it's okay to stop. It might just be that bullet journaling isn't for you, and that's okay. Why not try planners? There's so many planners, and as a stationery addict I wish I could buy planners. Have a shop up for those. Maybe look at digital. So I use Trello and I found that incredibly helpful for other things. Yeah, it's okay if it just doesn't work out for you, it's fine. Okay, so those are my insights. I truly hope that you've taken something away from this video. I know that bullet journaling can sometimes be frustrating and it's not always easy to keep going, so I hope that some tip in this video has helped you. If you've enjoyed this video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for similar future content, and thank you for watching.